we need a text input field. We choose to do it, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. And that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be adding a new functionality, a new piece to our puzzle of UI elements. We have a label, we have a button, and soon, my friends, we will have a text input field in which the user can enter any form of text he or she desires. It will be a wonderful thing, and it will be a pivotal piece to our UI library. Admittedly, scrappy UI library, but it is a UI library. One thing I want to do real quick before we continue is, if you remember, the main menu and the test scene are derived from the scene class. We have these base functions called enter and exit. And just because I'm anticipating some things, I want to go ahead and call those base class functions here in this main menu enter method, and then back over here in the test, the t.enter, because I anticipate that we'll probably need to put something into that scene enter and exit. We may want to do that, and if we do end up putting some functionality in here or in the exit, we want that to be called when we derive those. So it really is a good idea anyway to do that, to go ahead and call your super method, even if it's empty, because you never know what you might want to put in there later. So with that in mind, I just wanted to add that and make you aware that we were going to add that. And then something else that I encountered in some of my other testing, and that is our Sprite class. As you see, we draw our sprite here, and you know, we'll run it real quick, and I'll show you that it works just fine. You see, there he is. But if something was to come over here, but say before the draw call, and set the color of whatever, I'm going to set it here because it's the same as something else setting it. So we'll say love.graphics.set color, and we'll just say 255. You'll see what happens. So basically, we're not preserving the state here, and when we draw the sprite, it will be drawn with whatever color that it's set. Really, what we should do. Gosh, I hate to put another parameter in here, but let's do a self.color, and for now, let's just set it to all white, completely opaque white, and that way we'll have this hook in here that we can come back later and we can have it tint, do a color tint for this sprite or any sprite that we draw. Let me check that. We'll make sure that all works correctly. Yeah, it does. So before the sprite is drawn, it will set its own tint color. I guess we could call it a tint color. Let's just call it tint color. Not that color, this color. Tint color. So we're making a little handle that will come in here later. Either we'll set it here in the new function, or we may have a set color method of some sort. I mean, we could go ahead and put a color in here, and then we could say color or. So in other words, if we don't give it a color, then it will go ahead and default to white. We'll just leave it like that. So I wanted to just clean that up real quick. It makes me feel better, makes me feel all nice and tidy inside. And that's what's important here in coding. While we code, we must feel nice and tidy, and we must keep it simple. Well, so in that regard, we're going to create a new file. I'm going to call it text field, and this is going to be our beginnings of our adventure in text input. And I know that I'm going to want I'm going to want to basically derive from the label field. So we already have a label, and really the text field is pretty much a label, but we're just going to be controlling what goes into it. So I'm going to say local text field equals, we'll say label derive, and then we will call this a text field. That's what we're calling it. And before I like to always go ahead and do this, not rerun but return, not return but return text field, as in a text field. Yeah, that's text field. And then of course I'm going to want to say local label equals require lib.ui.label, so that we'll be able to refer to that. So now we have a text field. It's derived from the label. Okay. So let's do a new for this text field. New, and we're gonna have to have the same. We're gonna need the same inputs that the text field has, and what that's going to end up looking at, and we're going to want to call the base class's new method. So let's go ahead and do that. Say .super. Remember we learned this lesson last time. .new, and then we have to pass a self parameter in addition to all the other parameters. Let's go look and see what those are. Here they are. We need all these parameters. See, this will set all that up for us, which will be great. Ooh, look at that. There's a little space there. And we'll put those there, and then we'll also have those as inputs. Right? You see what I'm saying? Great, great. I'm glad you see what I'm saying. Okay. Now, we're also going to need a function called something like function text field on text input. So whenever some text is input into our text field, there'll be a few other variables that we'll want to set up, such as the one I can think of in particular would be self.focus. And of course, if it's not focused, then you don't get any input into your field. But we'll maybe we should have a function called function text field. You know, I'm seeing a refactor coming here where set focus, where what we'll do is we may have to end up taking some of these commonalities from these UI functions and then creating a base class for them. UI, typically these elements will have focus or not have focus, and that's important for some, if not all of the elements. In particular, this text field we're doing needs focus in order to know whether it should accept text input or not. So let's go ahead and self.focus equals focus. And of course we could also do yeah, I'm looking for this right here, assert. So we say assert type focus. How do you do that? Is it Boolean? I'm going into uncharted waters. Focus should be of type bool. And of course, I didn't put my double quotes around that. Focus, ladies and gentlemen, or lack thereof, is an important problem. So let's do Lua type. I want to check where are the types. I think there are. Here we are. Boolean. Did I send it? Did I do it right? Boolean. Yeah. Yeah. Just do that. We don't have to have that in there, but you know, it's kind of nice. So it'll tell you if your focus needs to be of type Boolean. Or I could just come up here and say sets the focus and true, false, whatever. I'm going to leave that in there for now, just for fun, enjoyable. Okay, so we're going to need to use a couple of functions here and let me show you. We have the love.keyPressed callback that Love2D gives us. We also have this love.TextInput, and that is called when the text has been entered by the user. Well, that's a great one, and we'll need that. As a matter of fact, we'll use some of this example. But an issue is that this particular function doesn't record values such as backspace. So we'll need also to have to take input from love.keyPressed, and we'll be looking for the backspace key and the delete key, perhaps. Now you can do this in a bunch of different ways, of course, and we might actually be able to just use this key pressed. But if you remember, we are already hooked into that event in the keyboard manager. So if you look, where is it? Keyboard. Isn't it the keyboard manager? I thought it was the keyboard manager. Yeah, it is. It's here. Hook events. Right here. Key pressed and key released. So we'd like to know when those happen, right? And if you remember, we have an events manager. We have a nice events manager. And something we don't have, which I want to just do real quick, and that is, we'd like to be able to check and see if an event actually exists. Okay? So we're going to do that. And all we have to do is, you see I copied this add, so I'm going to repurpose this. I'm going to return this, and I want to say, if return self.handlers of event type is not equal to nil, then that event exists. So we'll say returns true if the event exists. False otherwise. Nice and easy, ladies and gentlemen. Nice and easy does it, according to Frank Sinatra, every time. Okay, so we have this events manager, and if you remember, we added it in main here. We stuck it in the global table. We put an events key here in the global table, and we set it to this this event manager. We made a new one. So with that, since we initialize everything here, what I want to do is I want to make some new events. So that the keyboard is hooked this love event. So love.keyPressed, it owns it. But we also want to be able to have other things to be able to subscribe to this type of event. So let's refer to that global table by doing _G, which is the global Lua table, and we'll say that events, because we know that we've created one in main, and we'll say we want to invoke a method, and let's call it key pressed. We're making a new event. Yay! And let's give it the key that was pressed. All right? In the same vein, let's go ahead, not that we're going to use it now, but let's do one for key released also. So now this basically hooks the two love key pressed and key released functions. Then it basically repeats them through our event manager. That way we can have anybody subscribe to those that we want. And we're going to subscribe to them, believe me. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to subscribe to that. And that's going to be an interesting thing, because whenever it calls, whenever our event manager invokes that, it basically invokes this a key released event on whatever object that is subscribed, and then it sends this as a parameter. So that means that we don't have a this parameter. We don't have a self parameter. So we're going to have to get by that, get around that by using by creating our own little functions inside of here, inside of our stuff, that are aware of self, basically. So we want to make a function. We'll add it to ourself, and we'll call it key pressed. All right, so that's going to equal a new function, and we'll say key. We want to know what key it was. And all we're going to do is we're going to call let's call self. See what we can see. Since we're in here, we can have it do this, and because this function knows about self. But whenever the event that we're going to hook, we'll hook it to here, to this function, which doesn't have a self. Hopefully that makes sense. So we're going to have it call on text input, and let's give it key. We'll just do this, just like that. So it's a nice, simple function. You see this kind of thing in JavaScript where they do this type of thing, where they'll create a function and then they'll have a this parameter that refers to a this outside and all that good stuff. But anyway, trust me, this stuff, it works. You'll see it in just a minute. So now to complete the task, let's g.events. Remember, that's our events manager. Let's hook it, and what did we call it? Key pressed, right? And let's set that we want self.keyPressed called anytime a key is pressed. You see what I'm doing here? Great, I'm glad you are. You do. Okay, so on text input, let's do something. Let's print key. So, and we need to also create one of these things. So what we need to do is we need to come back over here to our main menu, because we'll stick it in the main menu for now. And we, of course, need to text field. We need to declare it here is require lib.ui.text field like so. Makes me happy. Want to type in code. Code makes me happy. I love it. All right. So let's do right here. So we want to add it to our entity manager because it is an entity. So let's add, and let's create a new text field just like this. We wouldn't normally do this. Matter of fact, let's just do this. Let's do this. Local text field like that, and we'll add it down here. That way, we'll want to refer to this later at some point. But for now, we'll do it like this. So let's put it at, say, a location of 20. No. Let's put it at a location of 80, and let's put it, say, oh, I don't know. Let's see, here's that X, Y. Let's put it at 60. Let's see if we can get it in between the main menu. So 80, 60, and what is it? Width. Let's just do the whole. No, let's do a width of 100. Let's do a height of 60 for now. And let's start with let's start with an input of hello. Yeah, that's fantastic, isn't it? I love hello. And do we have? We don't. Okay. So we need a color. So let's pass in a color. For now, we have a utility to do that in utils, but I don't want to go to the trouble right now of doing the local and all that stuff. Actually, why don't we go ahead and do that anyway? Because it's a good idea. Where do we use that? We use it in label. I'm being lazy. I'm going to copy it and paste it in. Paste it in right here, and then we'll say, what is it? u.color. Let's say, let's do a gray. What was it? Gray. Let's do like a 128. Hopefully that works. And we've added the text field. Let's see what happens. Probably be an error. Right, require text field. I didn't spell my stuff right. No, I didn't. Try again. There we go. There it is. Hello. Also, did the text field, didn't we have a alignment? So let's change our alignment in our text field. Let's change it to left, since that's what most people are gonna expect. And let's go over here in text field, and let's override the draw function that we currently are using from the label. So we'll say text field draw, and of course we have to call text field super, because we really want it to draw the actual text, which is in that super draw method, and we'll pass itself. I don't know that that's particularly necessary for that method, but we're going to do that. But here's what I really want to do. I want to do love.graphics draw, and then I want to say we want to draw, or I'm sorry, not draw. Let's do rectangle. And we want to draw lines, and we want that to be a self.position.x, self.position.y, and then let's say minus self.height divided by 2, because remember in the label we have this height that we've calculated, and actually you see it pretty much. This is what I want, so let's just copy that and we'll do that here. Makes it a lot easier, doesn't it? I don't like that spacing. Matter of fact, no, don't do that. Okay, let's see what happens now. There. So you can see we're drawing that rectangle for the size of this thing. Okay. And I think I want to move that a little bit, and this is let's see. Let's do, this is X. So let's do love.graphics.getWidth minus 100 divided by 2, divided by 2, divided by 2 minus 100. And I think that'll put us closer to the middle. Be minus 50 then. That should do it. Yeah, that does it. And let's, instead of 60, let's give it about 40 height. Yeah, that looks way better. And of course, we could make a little additional buffer area around this rectangle. And we may do that at some point, but for now, we'll just leave it at that. And you know what? Something else that we should do, just since this rectangle will probably become a fill, and it'll probably become a background itself. Let's draw that first, so then the text will be drawn on top of that. As a matter of fact, why don't we just go ahead and fill it? And let's go set a color. I'm going back over here so I can copy this. Let's grab that from Sprite. Remember, we set the color. Let's set this color to, do we have, we don't. I want to go grab this, and let's paste that in here. So now we'll say we're just going to set a color for now. We can go back and make this to where you can set it yourself. Let's set a really dark gray. Let's see what that looks like. So now we have this dark gray. Let's make it even darker. This dark gray box where we can see where our text field is supposed to be entered into. And let's make this a little bit, 128. Let's do 196. Make it a little bit lighter gray. That's better. Okay, now let's enable debugging. And then let's run it again. Let's see if we get any any keyboard. Yeah, look at that. So we're getting keyboard information. We're getting backspace. As you can see, beautiful. So that's working. So we're getting these events in our text field right here. So on key input, on text input. But there's a couple of different ways we can do this. So I did say we had these two methods. One was on text input, calls when text has been entered by the user. We could just use this, just the key pressed, but if we use this for everything, we're going to have to filter out all the other keystroke stuff. Let's see, key constants. I believe that there we are, a key constant. So we want all this and some of that stuff, but we may not want the left arrow, up arrow, insert, all that stuff, F1, F11, www key, all that stuff. So I think that's why they have given us this text input as opposed to just using the on key pressed. So really what we want to know is from this key press, the only thing that we really need is we want to know when the backspace key. We want to know when the backspace key is pressed because we need to know that to delete stuff. So maybe when we do that, so in this right here, we can say, we can just filter here. So we can say if key equals backspace, then. That makes sense? So only if the key is backspace do we now come down here and do that. Let's see. Oh, and then I have to say, I need another end. There we go. Let's see what that does real quick. So I can type, nothing. If I hit backspace, then I get that. Okay, that's the behavior I want for that particular function. So when the key is pressed, we're hooking key pressed. When the key pressed is called, this function gets called, or this method gets called. It checks to see if the key is backspace. If it is, then it goes ahead and goes ahead. It goes on and calls the on text input with backspace. Otherwise, it doesn't do anything. So that means that we want to also hook that text input method as well. And that is, of course, a Love2D event. So what I'm thinking is we have another function and we call it something like hook text input. Say like that. And let's say, yeah, here's where we can use our, if not, we're going to refer to our events object. Remember, we added an exists onto our events class. So we're going to check if that event has already been added into the handlers. So we're going to, if it hasn't, let's call it text input, right? If that's the case, then let's add it. So let's add text input. And then additionally, let's let's grab that callback, that text input callback here. Text. Like that. So then the question becomes, what are we going to put in here? Well, okay. Oh, something else I need to do. Function. This function is not going to be specific to our class. You see, it's a local function. It's going to, we want it to basically output an event when we get this text input, or we want it to output this text input event, basically so that anything can subscribe to text input. And you might argue, and we may do this later, that this really doesn't belong here in text field, that it may belong somewhere else. And if we create some kind of UI manager, then maybe that would be where it belongs, or some kind of input manager, or maybe, honestly, you know where this belongs? Yeah, it really belongs here. Let's put it in here. Let's just come over here, grab this stuff, and we'll put it in hook love events under the keyboard. And I'm going to not even bother to check for that for now. Let's just I'm not even going to add it either. We will just go ahead and grab this. We're going to go ahead and invoke it like that, and we'll invoke. So that way, this is all centralized and it's not specific to our text field. And so the keyboard manager here, the one and only keyboard module, will actually hook into that event, and then it will we'll pass that on into our events manager, invoke that as text input. So that's fantastic. That means we don't need this cruft. And we can basically do the same thing that we did here. So instead of hooking key pressed, we can hook text input. And remember, you can hook key press, you could do the whole thing with key press. You just have to do a bunch of filtering. But this way, all I have to do is filter this one back. All I want is backspace. That's all I care about in the key pressed. But then I can also grab this text input. Let's go ahead and make that function. Text. And then we can just say self on text input text like so. So we're hooking that. And let me run that. Let's run that and see if I mess anything up. Grab this over here. And we still get backspace, right? We get backspace, but we don't get the text. We don't get the text yet. Okay. So let me think. Did I save my? Let's do this. Print. We'll debug real quick. Bring my, yeah, so it's getting it and it's sending it. That's a very good thing. It's text input. Okay. We're hooking text input here. Oh, that's what it is. I'm sorry. Forgive me. It should be this. It was filtering. It was calling that same function. So now this will work. We should be able to get all these other keys, and we should be able to get the backspace key, but Enter and Alt and Delete and all that stuff, you don't see those because of the way that we've done it. So that is what we want. So what we can do here, okay, there's a couple things. We want to check if we're not focused or let's say we're not enabled. Now that one's, we haven't really done anything with that yet. I think it's a good idea. We probably need to do that. but we're going to just leave that in there for now. I think that we probably need to, we're probably going to need to do that. Let's comment this out, and we'll revisit that in just a few. We're probably going to need some sort of enabled parameter for these, what you would call entities or whatever. Okay. So we want to know if key equals backspace. Then we want to do something, right? Otherwise, else, we want to take the text, because remember our label has this text parameter, which is what we're printing. We want to take that, and we want to say that equals self.text, and then we want to append this, let's say text here. Text, better. So we'll just append it, and that's an end. Okay, so now yeah, so let's look at the way they do that here. I see they're doing the same thing here. So look at that. They've basically given us everything that we need. So they want to get the byte offset to the last UTF-8 character in the string, since we're not doing, since it supports UTF-8, and it shows you that. See. So this is apparently, oh yeah, that was the other thing. You want to see, look at this. On Android and iOS, text input is that. Let's grab this and let's put this as a comment up here, just as a note so that we will remember that. That's probably something that we would want to put in main or something like that if we want to do Android or iOS. All right. But we're going to just basically take this stuff right here, and we're going to stick it right here. And we can say self.text for this is self.text. And let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. So, oh, look at that. Now I'm going to press backspace. Oh, yeah, right. We need to require UTF-8. Okay. And I think that will fix us. Not retire, require. Require, not require. There we go. Okay. Here we are. Press a key. Backspace, backspace, backspace doesn't work. Okay. Don't panic, ladies and gentlemen. It'll be okay. UTF-8. Let's check it and make sure that I've got everything correct. And on text input, if text equals backspace, then the byte offset is the offset of self.text. Forgot to do that one. So we want the byte offset to that last UTF-8 character in the string. So that's what this is doing. And if there is a byte offset, then we're going to get rid of it. We're going to take that character off. And see, string.sub operates on bytes rather than UTF-8 characters, so you can't do string.sub. I'm going to put that like that. Let's see what happens. Hit backspace and look at that. She works, ladies and gentlemen. She works. It's a beautiful thing. Now, one of the things that and you see it'll keep on going and overflow. So we've got a few things that we'll need to work on. One is these need to be moved. These need to be moved to like some kind of some sort of on enable, and then we would want something like to do on disable you know, we would want to go back and unhook those, because you don't want to keep them hooked up, right? So we have to figure out how to do that. But I think that we're in a good place right now. And yeah, we've taken enough of you folks' time. But you see, we have a nice little text input box that at the current time it always has focus, but we can fix that later along with some other things. And I think with that, I'm going to end this episode here and wish you a wonderful day or night. See you next time.